Gentlemen, we have a special treat coming up for you next with George Brauneis from Eagle and Wild Horses Ranch in Eckert, Colorado. He is going to allow us to have an interactive activity with his beautiful Mustangs out there on the western slope of Colorado. George is just an amazing human being. I love George. I just stopped by to see the horses on my way through to Yellow Jacket, and he does some really special things with the horses. He actually works in his relationships with the horses through Qigong, which is a type of energy work. And he was once an aerospace engineer, which is really interesting. And I love to be able to touch on the point of perspective for people in relationships, of how you can see somebody in a certain situation and have our own personal perspectives and lens laid over that. And when we open up our hearts and our minds to be present in our authentic selves and meet people in that spaces, that we get to have the honor and privilege of a true gem of a human being in front of us, oftentimes, if given the opportunity. So George, please turn on your video and unmute yourself, my friend, and welcome to the party.
Cool. Did somebody say party?
Party!
Nice, nice. It's actually, I'm glad I'm out here an hour early. It's 41 degrees and sunshine, but you know, in an hour and a half it'll probably be 30 degrees and sun's starting to set. So this is good stuff. So I kind of came in not quite last minute, but I came in at the 2-minute warning for this game. To kind of fill a spot, and it was like, oh cool, we're talking about relationships. So I'm just going to kind of focus on building a relationship with a Mustang, and I really want to kind of have this open to questions and as interactive as we can with who's ever viewing and participating, to kind of bring them along as well.
How not to fix things?
What's that?
And how not to fix things that they fix themselves.
Right. So I got Bailey's in here, and that's it. Everyone else is finishing off lunch. We might get volunteers that want to come in, so we'll see. So I kind of thought we would do, I'll give you like 5 minutes of my backstory and how in the world you tie modern technology of aerospace engineering and 5-axis machining with a 5,000-year-old art of Qigong. I guess I've always been a visual type of person. Boy, you put calculus or algebra in front of me, I'm lost. You hand me a book on geometry, or we're talking like nowadays, the most 3 and 5-axis machining is like where kind of your 3D printers are coming now, but on a massive scale. I mean, you're building wings for airplanes and stuff. I can just visualize stuff in 3D, and sometimes even beyond 3D, kind of, you know, some people are playing checkers and chess, and I'm like, oh, let's go into the 3D chess and really have fun. And it's kind of just a spatial awareness, which kind of is both in your head when you do all of the heady maths engineering stuff of how to program a 5-axis machine to like cut a aircraft part out of a solid billet of aluminum, to the feel you get when you're working with horses is also in a 3-dimensional realm that encompasses, you know, spheres and distance and just so much going on, and angles and everything else. It's kind of like, it's weird. I just suck at pool. I can see all the shots, I just can't make them. So anyhow, but again, it's kind of in that same spatial awareness and understanding of how, you know, cause and effect of one thing to another, to another, to another. So yeah, I guess I was kind of lucky. I got a pretty darn good head on my shoulders. I know our last presenter was talking about the downside of a German background. My family comes from, there's a lot of Germans in my family too, but mostly from Austria, which Austria is kind of like the Canada to Germany. you know, like Canada is to us. Pretty darn smart people over there. And then on my mother's side, she was an empath before even people knew what empaths were, to a sense. She just had a way of feeling her way through things and knowing her ways through things just through intuition. And it was amazing. So I kind of got my dad's brain and my mom's gut and heart, which is kind of a really neat combination. I've found that for me personally, and especially when working with horses, when it comes to relationships, the brain can kind of get in the way because you can either overthink things or you can just, really overthink things, or you can get stuck because your mind just gets stuck on something or fixated on something. And then you're losing the feeling and the heart of what's going on. So I've kind of, using the Qigong, it's gut, heart, brain. So it's from the basement to the penthouse. And you can't, unless you've got a parachute or a helicopter, you ain't getting to the penthouse until you get to the ground floor and work your way up. So I kind of look at that way as far as how our body is engineered as well. So after a stint in California of building all these exotic, amazing aircraft parts, and both commercial and military, Calvin's listening, he'd appreciate, was building a lot of parts for the B-2 bomber, the FA-18s, ENF, Teledyne Ryans, Global Hawk, all kinds of Sikorsky helicopter parts. At any given time when I was running parts from the shop to where they were processed to be anodized and painted and all of that, there were times I'd have like $2 million worth of aircraft parts in the back of my pickup truck. Driving through Compton, a white boy driving through Compton with $2 million worth of aircraft parts. So that was life in California. But after September 11th, I just was like, I've got to get out of a place that's almost like ground zero. After September 11th and Washington was hit and New York was hit, and here I am living just south of LA and everything is shut down and people are worried. And that was kind of my wake up call to get out of California and get back home to Colorado. And when I got back to Colorado, I kind of made the shift back to how I was as a kid and with the horses, and just did a major shift from, the brainiac to someone that's a little more compassionate and caring and tuned in with the horses. And so many of these horses really need a lot of help from us, because unfortunately a lot of horses get in the wrong hands. So in the last 5 years or so, I've gone to completely specializing with Mustangs, which are our wild horses. Anybody listening from Australia, the equivalent of your Brumbies. We've got probably 150,000 wild horses across the western states that are running wild. And we have another 50 or 60,000 in holding. And Bureau of Land Management has been tasked for managing the horses. And if you ask 10 different people about how the BLM is doing, you'll get 20 different opinions, and no two of them are alike. But there's a lot of horses out there in need. I mean, just like there's a lot of people out there that are in need and help. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this camera around and give you all a first person view. And we're just going to go interact with Bailey's and kind of go through some of the basic steps of how I use Qigong and other, not sure modalities is the right word, but other tools that are in my toolkit on how to connect with a wild horse. And I'll share some of Bailey's story. Her name's Bailey's because she showed up here on St. Patrick's Day.
Nice.
So I figured, Bailey's Irish Cream was, I happened to be sipping on their espresso version of Bailey's Irish Cream, which is oh so good. So anyhow, yeah, she's Bailey's Espresso. So I'm going to wander over there, and we may get some other horses interacting. And again, hopefully what I'm sharing on building a relationship with a horse and building trust with a horse, it can extrapolate and it can shift into human relationships, whether it be in the workplace, with a significant other, with a spouse, with children, grandchildren, grandparents, parents, any of those. It's just we'll see how it transpires, and hopefully it'll be fun. I will share one thing with the tech side of me. These fancy smartwatches, some of the new ones have blood oxygen meters on them. I have mine set to vibrate and my blood oxygen drops below 98%. It's no big audible anything. It's just like, you know, when your cell phone's on buzz. And my blood oxygen drops below 98%. I know I'm not breathing deep enough. I know I'm not getting a good amount of air to my brain. I'm not getting enough air to my every cell in my body. And it is amazing when you drop below 98% blood oxygen, especially when you're at altitude at over a mile high, how that can physiologically and mentally affect you because you aren't getting enough oxygen to your body. And in a lot of stressful situations, the first thing you do is you start short breathing. You don't even breathe halfway through your lungs. You're breathing in like the upper quarter of your lungs. And that's when people start to hyperventilate. That's when it's just, you know, and then your stress levels go up and all of that. So I like having this as just using technology to help me stay aware of my body when I may be drifting off because I'm talking about stuff instead of focusing on stuff. Or, you know, something exciting happened and I just start short breathing. So I just get that little buzz on my wrist and then I'm like, okay, belly button to tailbone, belly button to tailbone, belly button to tailbone. And then the lungs shrink down, the diaphragm shrinks down, and then we get the full body breathing. So anyhow, and you know, it's a handy tool. HeartMath has other monitors that go really, really deep into stuff. But, you know, this is some knockoff smartwatch that I think cost me $40 and it does a great job. So it's a nice little tool to have. So, all right, I'm going to head over and we can start horsing around. Now would be a good time if anybody had questions. Alicia, are you driving the bus? Are you in charge of who can talk and who can't?
I'm always driving the bus. I am the bus.
I know, that's why I asked. Pun intended.
Wah, 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 da-da-da. So George, for some people who are not aware of what HeartMath is, can you dive into that a little bit more?
Okay, so HeartMath, so the sun's not blinding. HeartMath is it's an organization that's using scientific tools of measurement and using full-on scientific method, going through studies and the whole 9 yards to basically document our ability to feel, document our ability to sense things beyond physical touch, beyond our reach. And with HeartMath, they're out to like 10 to 20 feet. And they've got the tools and what have you that they can measure that. If I get close enough, let me switch back over. Okay, so these, between the two posts is 10 feet. And then there's Bailey's. So for a human, if I was to stand in the middle of this, my energetic field would go about 5 feet that way and about 5 feet that way. So, but using HeartMath, I would not be able to feel what is going on with Bailey's, except that a horse's heart is 5 to 6 times larger than a human's. So guess what? They've been able to measure that a horse's energetic field, instead of 5 feet, is 5 times that. So there's 10, 20, 5. So now as far as heart math is concerned, that is the sphere that a horse can pick up other bioelectric energy from, whether it be another horse or a human or a dog or a cat or what have you. So sticking with a science that's proven, horses have a 25 feet from any direction, this bubble that they can pick things up on. Humans, it's about a 5-foot bubble. I know through qigong and stuff that bubble's way bigger, way bigger, but it can't be measured, so it isn't fact according to Western science. But so anyhow, that's heart math. It's all one word. You can go to heartmath. I think it's org. It might be heartmath.com. Anyhow, it's heartmath. something.
I'll find it and drop it in the chat.
Right. Anyhow, it's some interesting stuff, and they've done some. They have done some amazing studies with horses, and very well documented. And again, it's just kind of tip of the iceberg. So anyhow, utilizing that, when Bailey's came here, she had a halter on that she had put in a squeeze chute, and they had basically given her no choice but to accept a halter on her face. When she came here, she really, is right. She really didn't want to have a whole lot to do with anybody. She had been to a couple of trainers and gotten nowhere. So I'm using my, I believe a lot of the horses here, their backstory is, well, they've been to 2 trainers and got nowhere. They've been to 3 trainers and have gotten nowhere. And with me, I'm like, okay, well, have they really been to 3 trainers, or have they been exposed to the same method 3 times by 3 different people? So I'm like, we know what doesn't work. So I'm going to go the Qigong heart math route. And I'm just going to come in here, and I know I'm within her field without me being too terribly close. And we're just going to spend time playing, kind of an energy ping pong back and forth. And ping pong is probably not the greatest example, but there's an energy flow going to her and from me and to me, and we're just sharing in that. And the idea is for them to relax in your presence instead of freaking out because you got a stick and a string or a whip, and you're having them run in a circle to the left and then turn around and run a circle on the right. And meanwhile, they're all frazzled because now they're not deep breathing. Now they're shallow breathing, and brain, blood to their brain and blood to their body is going down, and it's hard for a body to process when you don't have enough oxygen. So same thing. And now she's kind of about ready to fall asleep. So this is kind of what I like to get into, is almost this meditative state of deep relaxation. Because when a horse can feel this comfortable around you, guess what? And then the trust starts building. And over time, sometimes it's a matter of hours, sometimes a matter of days, could be a few weeks, and you're able to get in closer without there being any rodeos, without there being any, her trying to jump a 6-foot panel, without her trying to charge at me, without any, no fear aggression, no hyper flight, trying to get away from what's perceived as a dangerous situation. And it's just building a feel-good environment, and just building trust gradually, and not forcing it. And I've always said that you can't help someone through trauma by adding more trauma. And yet that's what most training they try and do. They're like, oh, well, we're just going to force this horse through until they come out the other end. And it's just, maybe it works for some horses, but for a lot, they either shut down, or Mustangs will come and fight you, because they have to fight to survive in the wild, or they will just find a way to keep running away. So just continue to build the trust, and they relax. And it's slow. It's a slow process, and it's kind of like watching paint dry or grass grow. There isn't a lot of, it doesn't make for real exciting television. Whereas, Man from Snowy River, that's some pretty excited stuff. Even the Horse Whisperer, some pretty exciting stuff. But it's like, okay, what's great for TV ain't really great for reality. And that applies to a lot of things going on nowadays. Just slow things down and give an opportunity to feel, both to the horse and to you. And I think a lot of things today, we've become so hyper reactive, whether it be like the latest COVID scare or the latest terrorist threat or the latest, just go down the line, just pull something out of the hat. And the news media just blows everything out of proportion. And then everybody's in freak out mode. First it's the terrorists, and now it's the viruses. And, next thing you know, there'll be someone coming here in some mothership from another galaxy or whatever. And it's just going to be like, okay, yet when you turn off the TV and you kind of focus on what's going on in your neighborhood, it's like, it's actually pretty okay where I'm at. So yeah. And so I think if we all just kind of slow things down so we can breathe and we can feel, that is two key elements in this, oversaturated, too much media, whether it be social or television or what have you, where we're just overwhelmed with information, is to just slow it down and breathe and allow, and the horses appreciate that. I think everybody appreciates, we can just slow down and breathe. And then you feel and you listen, and it's just, that you don't really need to fix that much. And you can just kind of feel you and whoever you're with, if you can just kind of feel things through, instead of arguing all the time or fighting over things, or just Mr. Fix-It shows up, or, the drama mama or what have you. It's just, I think in the 21st century of instant gratification and hurry up and I want it yesterday world, we just slow it down and breathe. And man, it's just, there's something, I even joke, the phrase of mindfulness. I'm kind of like, I was a blonde toe-headed boy growing up, and then my hair turned gray. So I went from like blonde moments to senior moments. And I'm just like, the mindfulness, I'm like, no, it's kind of more like mindlessness, but it's kind of the same effect. Is like, sometimes it's good when your brain doesn't get in the way, and just we're beings, not doings. I mean, it's fun to do stuff. It's fun to be type A, and this goal and that goal and everything else, and sometimes it's just good to breathe. And a lot of times when something ain't working right, just breathe. And it's kind of on the Zen side of things, and that's okay. I mean, Bailey's about to fall asleep, and I have this effect on women. So anyhow.
Oh, George, you're so funny. That's so not true.
Right.
But you have ladies visit you all the time. But
I do.
What I was going to ask is that in the years that you had, we're just going to segue out of that. In the years, Calvin and George and I are all friends. That's why we get to laugh about this. In the years of you working with Mustangs, what have you noticed as you've learned how to build healthier relationships with them, and how the relationships with people in the world outside of horses has changed for you?
That is, I think a lot of it is that working in the flow or working with the flow instead of always having to go against the flow. Or I think I used to, not so much now, and I still have some friends, or a lot of people have just got to always be right. There's like somehow we have to be right. It's like the meaning of your life. I have to be right. And it's like sometimes it's like we've got a choice. We can be right even though maybe we're not, or even if you are right, it's kind of how you go about being right. Um, whereas, I would rather be kind. I get a lot further in my life being kind than I ever did being right. And it's fun when you meet that person on social media or out in the world that no matter what, they've got to argue their point until they're right. And I usually just start, the first words that come out of my right, I'm like, out of my mouth are, yeah, wow, you're right. That is really cool. That is amazing. And now let's get on to something important. So I think that's part of it. And time, it's hard in the 21st century. We're all under, we have we all have deadlines to meet for whether it be work related or you got so many things you got to get done in a day or what have you. But I keep on checking horses. I've never seen a watch on one of them yet. I haven't even seen a calendar up in the barn. So it's kind of a different perspective there as well. It takes the time it takes is with horses. And I've had horses that could do everything you could imagine in halter training on the ground, loading trailers, getting their hooves trimmed, all of that in a week. And I've had other horses that it's taken a year because of all the stuff we've had to work through. And it's very similar to men, women, and children that are struggling with PTSD, some other forms of abuse, what have you. They've got junk in their past that they're having to, deal with. And these horses are very similar. Some of them are pretty clean slate. And then there's others that, like Bailey's had some pretty bad experiences with humans. Just like a woman having a bad experience with a couple of men. It's a lot to get through, or a man having some bad experiences with women, or whatever, have just had bad relationship experiences. And it's difficult. And it's not something you can rush through. It takes time, and it's quality time. And like I said before, you can't fix trauma with more trauma. So, and I'm not going to be here going, oh, poor pony, so many bad things have happened to you in the past either. That pity doesn't help either. You've got to go, yeah, I get it. You've had bad experiences with people, and that's not going to happen with me. And a lot of times you have to say that over and over again. You got to feel that over and over again. You've gone through shit, but that ain't happening with me. It's going to be better with me. You're going to be safe with me. You're going to be happy with me. You're going to be healthy with me, and all of that. So again, you got to kind of put it in that positive phrase as well, that, it's not that won'ts and don'ts. It's things are getting better all the time. Things are improving. You are a taller, more beautiful horse than when you showed up here, and all of that. And it's kind of positive affirmation line type stuff. It's just more feel, but some of it is allowing your brain the right vocabulary. So the dash T or the apostrophe T's, you got to lose them. It's got to be all can, will, do, not can't, won't, don't. So, and so it's like, yeah, you can be a little better today than yesterday. You will be a little bit better today. I think it was Coach Omar that said, we're going to be 1% better today than we were yesterday. Those 1% add up. They really add up.
That's good stuff, George. Alicia is getting a quick bite to eat.
Right.
So you're
Calvin,
out there. This is
let's
Calvin.
dialogue some. Let's dialogue some from the military side of the equation and what have you, working with veterans and whether it be PTSD or other stuff, or just coming back from the military and trying to figure out where in the world do I fit in?
You know, I really appreciate that question and this dialogue, George, because I think in the years that I've been working with military members and their families and equine therapy and how equine assisted therapy and how that's great, I really appreciated going out to your place and spending time with the Mustangs because of how intuitive and sensitive they are to help with grounding. That as far as military members, we're so accustomed to being told that the mission comes first no matter what. And so we've got to put aside our emotions. And sometimes when we've been doing that for so long and it comes out sideways, being able to spend time around the horses is such a great and wonderful grounding opportunity to reintegrate back into humanity because we're so busy trying to take care of whatever needs to make it, whatever we need to do in order to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's got to be hard. The military is so structured, and so, you know, you got to be able to bounce a quarter off your bed when it's made in the morning. You've got to, you know, be able to see your reflection in your boots, and you know, all of the protocols and everything that's expected throughout a day, so regimented and so structured. And then you get out in the real world, and it can be quite chaotic.
Yeah, because I mean, I know for me, when the transition coming out of the military into civilian population, it was tough because of the lack of structure, militarily speaking, that civilian population has that keeps people accountable in certain areas. That was a tough pill to swallow, and I found myself being frustrated quite a bit of the time with that process and that transition. So I applaud individuals like yourself that are able to help with putting that all in perspective and being okay in the chaos.
Yeah, and it's yeah, it's a two-way street. It's both the veteran or active duty, you know, active duty or veteran, even first responders, you know, police, fire, ambulance, paramedic, all doctors, nurses, all of it. It's like their life outside of the four walls of home can just be so intense. And for you know, on the flip side, for the spouse and the children and parents and the family members of the veteran, the active duty, the first responder,
right,
for them to have that understanding as well, or being able to slow things down a bit to realize that, you know, dad or mom, brother, sister, whoever has just come home from, you know, 6 months in Afghanistan, or maybe they've just done a 24-hour shift at the hospital. It's just that level of awareness that both sides of that relationship really need to kind of be tuned into to really help that relationship strengthen.
I think more than anything, George, is that with our technology that we have today and the rapid deployments back to back, well, I should say rapid, I should say the numerous deployments that happen back to back for military members that are in combat zones or have high the great need for their expertise in certain hot spots around the world has really affected our troops, our people, in a way where it desensitizes them to the to the reintegration of being back at home, to being with their families, to being able to step out of that role. And with all that's happening in our world today, as I've been spending time with military members, active and veterans, it has been a powerful journey to see the tools that have come up to be able to help work with men and women in the military, as well as first responders, which is interesting because a lot of our military members do go into first responding work. So they've got trauma not only from military and their service there, but also being first responders as well. Can you speak to more about how Qigong and how that has been helpful, not only for you, but with people that you've seen use that to help them to get grounded?
Yeah. It's what I really appreciate about Qigong, and I will open it up to numerous options in the martial arts. Somebody's going to somebody's going to resonate with karate. Somebody's going to resonate with jujitsu. Somebody's going to resonate with kung fu, what have you. For me and the horses, what I liked about Qigong is it is a martial art, but it is a healing martial art. It is primarily on how do we use our body's own chi, our body's own biomechanical, bioelectric energy to help us get through the day, help us, breathe deeper, help a lot of, you've got there's a lot of acupressure work within Qigong as well. And it's how do we help the body excel in times of trauma or stress or what have you, or it's helping your body be prepared for that as well. So it's like if everything's working properly going into a stressful situation, you're probably going to go through that stressful situation better than if everything wasn't working properly. And that is, and I know with Exodus and your exercise and physical fitness stuff, it's a lot there. The Qigong takes it down to the subatomic level, literally almost into the quantum realm, where you're just really working with all the energy around you. Qigong is very similar to, Luke Skywalker and the Force is probably the closest comparison for somebody that hasn't delved into Qigong or a martial art. It's been around for over 5,000 years. It's phenomenal the difference. I can tell when I'm not breathing properly. I just know. My head feels a little bit differently. My body feels a little differently. I can just tell when my lungs are not getting enough oxygen to every cell in my being. So, and then utilizing that Qigong and your breathing for you to stay calm helps the horse to stay calm because they're picking up on your energy. Just like when any of us are in a group setting, you always can pick up on that person that's really hyperactive or is really worried about something. They've got all that nervous energy going on and they can just be scattered all over the place. and I call it, it's the person in the room lobbing the stress bombs. You know, you just are like, God, I got to get away from this person. They're just radiating so much negative energy. And then there's those other people that kind of walk into a room and they just about own the place because they are so calm and they are so centered and they are so, you know, they really have got their personal stuff together. And they're, you know, everyone's still going to be struggling with stuff deep down and what have you. Nobody's perfect. There was only one perfect person on this planet, and he got crucified for it. So, it's always a journey, but there's so much when you literally have the ability and the tools available to control your breathing, when you control your heart rate, when you can control your nervous system, it's quite liberating, because there are people out there that want to manipulate those things to control you. And
Right.
and you have that control within you, you're prepared for a lot of stuff that the average person is just gonna, you know, is gonna have a meltdown over.
That's good, George. That's really good.
And it can also help in the other direction for people that are dealing with meltdowns and what have you, or dealing with deep emotional stuff, what's ever going on. When you start taking that journey in Qigong or Tai Chi or one of the competitive martial arts or what have you, you start, when you start getting right with your body, the brain tends to follow.
Mm-hmm.
George, I really love how you brought that up, and how do you work with the masculine and feminine energies, and the importance of reading the nonverbal communication from horses, and how that translates into the importance of us to read the nonverbal communication and energy in each other as humans to have healthier relationships.
Right. Yeah. God, most of the, with Qigong, I would say I still take note of, you know, where are those ears on the horse? Where are their eyes? Where, you know, how are they breathing? I mean, there's a lot of going on. Let's see. So Bailey's is breathing all the way back to her hips. So she's very relaxed. She is deep breathing. That is really good. So I'm seeing that. If she's upset, I may only see her breathing going to just past her withers, or where the girth would be when you put a saddle on. Then you know you got an anxious horse that's really, you know, going to be really reactive, because they're not getting the blood to the brain. They're not getting blood to their entire body. And they're just in that, they've gone into flight mode, or they've gone into survival mode instead of rest and thrive. They're in the fight, the survive, the run for your life mode. And yet most trainers will put a horse in this mode and then wonder why they're really not getting results with a sensitive or reactive horse, because you're just not allowing them to process and breathe and take things in. So they're always in fear mode. I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, if I was teaching elementary school and everything I asked of the kids, I yelled at the kids and then smacked a ruler on the desk or what have you. It's, you know, once in a while, it might get somebody's attention, but to do it repetitively and redundantly, you're just, it's so counterproductive. So, but beyond the body language, when you start getting deep in Qigong and you start really, you know, and I use the heart math to prove you know, you get in the energy fields, all of a sudden you're feeling it. You're like, oh, okay. And then it's like, am I feeling better? Is the horse feeling better? And yeah, it's kind of back in the Zen horsemanship stuff. But when you start being able to share feeling better, feeling worse, feeling good, feeling bad. And it's pretty easy to differentiate and catch on pretty quick when things are going well or not going well. It's kind of that sixth sense, or, mom always having the eyes on the back of her head type thing. So again, in relationships, when you get to that point where you're actually working on, yes, visually awareness on body language and all of that. And with humans, you can pick up, tone of voice and all of that. But when you can really come down to the feel, and you start, and that kind of delves into empathy and all of that. Is that person feeling better or worse? And so it just kind of gets to the feel. And I work with these horses so much by feel. I can feel the horses behind me or what have you. I don't even have to have my eyes on them. That I can feel what's going on. And you wade into 17 horses on a full moon at midnight, and there's no worries, because you can see enough with the moonlight, but the rest of it, you just got to feel it. And so that is definitely, I guess, feel would definitely be on the feminine side of things, and the thinking, fixing on the masculine side. But it's, in the 21st century, everything is real, at least business wise, education wise, things are really dialed in on the thinking, pass the test, fix it, and move on to the next thing. But when you, on the other side, there's more and more, meditation and mindfulness practices and stuff going on, but they just, I don't see it, the two blending together as they should for success. It's kind of like you got to have one or the other. You can't have both. Well, why can't you have both? And that's where my, I've got the old aerospace engineer on one side, and I've got the horse whisperer on the other side. And so I'm like, no, yeah, you can have both. You can have the brain and the heart and the gut. You can feel it, you can think it. But I have found in my experience with the horses, feel first and then think it through, but feel first. So I don't know, does that help at all?
Yes. Calvin, what do you think?
Just as I'm just listening to you, as you share about this, George, I think what comes to mind is that there's just like a centeredness, more like I know as a man that sometimes we're so bombarded with so much stimulus that sometimes it's hard to find the center. Mm-hmm. Pull back and be able to relax and be able to be able to feel like it's safe to be able to let our guard down enough to be able to let go of those concerns and worries, and to focus on our breathing and to focus on being present, because we're trying to think of how to be prepared for the next crisis that's going to come up. What do you see with what you've been able to share and all that's been happening in our nation and our world of 2021, of how to incorporate this more in our lives?
Right.
All that's going on.
Yeah, it's, that is a big one. Because you Calvin, I'm just going to kind of jump into your shoes for a little bit as best as I can, because I know both with your military background, and then you've gone into private security, bodyguards type stuff, or court security for, high value individuals.
Right.
So you have got to be at the ready.
Yeah, right.
So that something like what happened at the Capitol, or, you know, oh my God, Siri, are you being ignored? Something that happened in the Capitol.
You have another situation there, George, in regards to community, what community looks like, and because you have a baby there.
I have a baby, and Mama's pregnant with another baby.
Right, but Mama's is wild, and then you have Auntie Bailey, and like, what's that been like for them? And
it's been very, very, so whole family dynamics. And I'll jump into that. Let me just finish this one thought with Calvin.
With Calvin, I just wanted to throw that in there since they were making noise.
Yeah, I found, again, I'm more prepared and feel more at the ready. And when these horses come in, these are horses that have, you know, tried biting people, tried striking people. They have tried, you know, come at you, attack you out of, you know, fear aggression. Just like, you know, a pit bull will come at, even though the dog is perfectly fine, it has had so many bad experiences with people that they only know I'm going to attack because I think that's the only way I can survive.
Right.
But I have found that in the breathing and the centering and the mindfulness part of it, that when you come in where your faculties are working properly and you are capable of, in an instant, being able to defend yourself if you need to. You know, you're not worried about defending yourself because you know you're there, your body is at the ready, you're running 100% oxygen through your blood, your cells are all working properly, your head is working well, all of that. You can walk into a situation where people are like, I wouldn't get in that pen with that horse. And I'm like, well, we've got to do it sooner or later.
Right.
And again, and that's kind of where I have my watch give me that little reminder. It's like, oh, you're under 98% oxygen, and I get that little buzz. I'm like, okay, I've got to center a little more. I've got to breathe a little deeper. But what I found is, and kind of a Karate Kid reference, it's like after a while, the wax on, wax off just comes to. It's you're prepared. It comes. You're ready for that bad situation if it happens, but you are also ready for all the good situations. Whereas in the other one, where you're only prepared for the bad, then you're not ready for the good.
Okay.
So, and again, I have seen, you know, my brother was Green Beret, and he's just got a swagger to him. I mean, he's retired and he's 66 years old. I know with an instant, if his life was threatened or someone else's life was threatened, that person would be on the ground, you know.
Right.
So it's just like that training, those abilities just come natural. And yet he's laid back and calm. You know, his awareness is 100% all the time, you know, and he will sit so he sees the door of wherever he's at. He likes to see the, you know, where people could be coming in. He wants to be able to have eyes on him first. But, you know, he's got that awareness, but he's also secure and calm in that awareness. So it's not a nervous awareness. It's a vigilance. It's just like the horses. You'll have those horses that are a little aware, but they don't alert until something happens.
Okay. But there is, like what you said about vigilance. That's good.
And instead of a hyper state of readiness, there's a difference.
Yeah. And yet, you know, in an instant, you're there, you're at the ready. It comes quick because your body's all like, oh, I already know all that. You know, that part of the toolkit is fine. It's when you have your doubts, or you're just, you know, and there's a difference between confidence and overconfidence.
Right.
Confidence is when Michael Jordan shows up to play basketball, you know, because he's just at that level. Overconfidence is when somebody that's more, you know, he's got the show. He can talk the talk. He can talk the smack and that. But, you know, he's missing a rebound. He's missing a 3-pointer. He's missing, you know, he misses the game-winning goal or what have you. That's the overconfidence or the, you know, the street talking and all of that. Whereas you get someone in there like a Jordan or what have you, it's like, okay, everybody's got to play at a different, at his level or beyond to have a chance. When Jordan was in his prime. And you watch him play basketball and he can't even explain what he's doing. It just happens. He's so in the zone and he's so dialed into chi and the Zen and all of that. So, and that's what I think with Qigong and the other martial arts really enables for your body to truly be as well tuned as it's designed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So George, we're wrapping into the last 7 minutes or so. Is there anything you'd like to bring together in regards to the horses and masculinity and relationships? And if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions? Or I just say that I think some of the greatest strength in men is when we are capable of being vulnerable. Because it's like you've got to put yourself out there.
Right.
You've got to be willing to take a hit and you've got to be willing to bleed in public.
Yeah.
But when you're that vulnerable and you just kind of like, you know, there's something to it. And the people I think of would be like a Shaolin monk or even like the Dalai Lama or Martin Luther King's another one that really comes to mind as someone that was extremely vulnerable, and yet he put his vision and his dream out there, and it really helped to change the world. And we've had some setbacks along the way, yet, you know, I have a dream speech is probably the greatest speech and greatest vision of the 20th century, or at least up in the top 3, easily. And so yet, I mean, he had to, you know, he ended up getting assassinated.
Right.
But his vision and his dream didn't die when that bullet hit him. It just got bigger. And it's still here today. And I wish more and more people would revisit that because it is beautiful. We're all brothers. We're all sisters, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at. And even the horses just, they, you know, the horse is the only animal mentioned in heaven. So that tells me that's a pretty significant animal. It's the only animal mentioned in heaven. I'm sure there's dogs and cats and everything else in heaven, but the horse is the only one that made it into the Bible, actually being in heaven. So,
well, they are the messengers between worlds, you know.
Yes.
You look at a bunch of different religious texts, and you see it over and over and over again that horses were the messengers between the worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you see what June said in the chat? George, have you had a chance to see that?
I can't see on this phone. I wouldn't even know what button to push.
Okay.
Well, let's tell him. June. He agrees, and he says some great new companies bring both together, like Mind Valley, for example, which has many great inspirational speakers on it. Thank you for bringing that forward, Jim.
Awesome.
Yeah.